Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasant weather outside, and we are privileged to have our seventh speaker, Professor Dharampuri Vidyasagar. So I can interpret it in this way that Vidyasagar has come to Dharampuri. He will be delivering the lecture amongst us, and it's a collaborative lecture between Institute of Medical Sciences and Indian Institute of Technology, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, under Institute Lecture Series. And I don't know why the audience is less, but I can interpret it in this way that there are three parallel events going on right now. Google is holding one event, that is Startup Weekend. We have just decided an innovators meet, and then few companies are holding campus interviews. There are some extra classes going on and some tests. So with all those hurdles and this present weather, I feel that the audience is not less. We'll start and we'll be catching up soon. The Institute Lecture Series video records every lecture and we archive it, and very soon we are going to launch a knowledge portal wherein it will be available to every student and the community at large for utilization. So the lectures are going to be very meaningful, and I am sure that we will use it throughout our life. Whenever we need it, we can learn a lot from these lectures. Now I invite Professor Dharampuri Vidyasagar to the dais, and I request him to garner the first of Malviya. I request Aditi to welcome Professor Vidyasagar with a bouquet. Thank you very much. With the motto of educate to innovate and innovate to change, we have started Institute Lecture Series, with first lecture being delivered by Jal Purush Raman Megasese awardee Rajendra Singh. We have 6 lectures delivered in ILS so far. The second one was by one of the friends of today's speaker, Dr. Manu Gowda. He was an alumnus of this very department. Third lecture was given by Mr. Narayan Desai. He is probably one of the very few persons who have lived with Gandhi, and he spoke on Gandhi as I saw. Fourth lecture was given by Professor S.P. Sukhatme, again an alumnus of this department, but who was Chairman, Atomic Energy Regulation Board, and former Director of Indian Institute of Technology. They were all Padma awardees except Ms. Dr. Manu Gowda. Then we had 5th lecture by Mr. Shalabh Kumar Singh, whose book was published by Kennedy Institute, Harvard, and was recognized by Australia as a strategic reference for innovation in governance. 6th lecture was delivered by Ambassador Rajiv Kumar Bhatia, who is Director General of Indian Council of World Affairs. So we are privileged to have distinguished speakers in Institute Lecture Series. The 7th one under the series, but not an Institute lecture, was by Dr. Sankrant Sanu, who discussed on English medium as a medium of instruction, the myths and challenges. And the 7th Institute lecture is going to be delivered by Professor Dharampuri Vidyasagar. And coming up in the series, we have Dr. Tessie Thomas, who is also called Agni Putri. She has consented, and we are now trying to arrive at a mutually agreeable date when she will arrive here to deliver the 8th Institute lecture. We have many more speakers in pipeline, and we are pretty sure that the Institute, as the feedback that I am getting from the students, that there are some problem or the other because of which they are not able to come or join. But the series has percolated within the student community, and with knowledge portal, We are very much sure that they will be meaningful. These lectures will be meaningful and always available to them. So this lecture of Professor Vidyasagar is a collaborative lecture between ILS and IMS, particularly because he is a neonatologist and he is one of the developers of the stream of neonatology. So it's a thing of which we can be proud as an Indian, that in US he has been bearing the flag of India high and has established himself as one of the leading proponents of neonatology and its associated issues as they go in Millennium Development Goals. So we'll be discussing today the challenges of neonatology as a component of Millennium Development Goals, how biotechnology and other inputs are invested. So if you see technology medicine interface will probably be one of the interesting components where we can focus today and will be surely benefited with this lecture. With these words, I request Professor Ashok Kumar, Head Pediatrics, IMS BHU, to introduce our speaker of today. Mr. Kumar.
Very good morning. It's my broad privilege to introduce the learned speaker of today's lecture. Dr. Dharampuri Vidyasagar is Professor Emeritus in the Department of Pediatrics and Neonatology, University of Illinois at Chicago, US. He has been very active in the academic field for over 4 decades and has published more than 200 publications. The impact of his research and advocacy of newborn health has been felt all over the world in improving the care of countless newborn babies. His research and efforts are particularly important and relevant to our country, India, where we are still struggling with high neonatal and infant mortality rates. I can divide his life in 4 or 5 periods. As early career, he was born in Karimnagar district of Andhra Pradesh and he obtained his MBBS degree from Osmania Medical College in 1961. After that, he went to the US for higher studies and received training in pediatrics and further specialized in the field of neonatology. That time, neonatal medicine or neonatology was a very new field, nascent field of medicine, and it was only in 1960 the term neonatology was coined by US pediatrician Alexander Shah. And 10 years down the line, Dr. Vidyasagar was there to pursue his interest in this field. And he remains very active academically in this field till today. He also obtained a master's degree in physiology from Canada, which probably helped him to better understand the rapidly changing transitional physiology of a newborn baby. As a researcher, he has contributed immensely to the growth and development of neonatology. He has worked extensively on respiratory distress syndrome in newborn babies, what we call RDS or island membrane disease. Respiratory distress syndrome is a very common problem in newborn babies, particularly those who are born before time, what we call them preterm babies or premature babies. They lack in their lungs a substance known as surfactant. Because of surfactant deficiency, these babies cannot breathe. So they struggle with their breathing, they have respiratory distress, and most will die in a matter of 2 or 3 days if they are not given assistance or respiratory support. Just tell you a story. In 1963, on 7th of August, US First Lady, the wife of John F. Kennedy, delivered a baby boy at 34 weeks of gestation, weighing 2.1 kg. The baby developed respiratory distress soon after birth. Well, that time, whatever available medical interventions were used, and by 48 to 72 hours, the baby died. So the obituary was published in New York Times, and this obituary challenged American science that here was a newborn baby delivered to a president who had a respiratory distress, and American science was not able to save that baby. And in a matter of 5 years, this was taken as a challenge. A number of investigations took place in basic science and in clinical medicine. They understood the pathophysiology. The ventilators were miniaturized from adults to newborn babies, and by 70s, the care had improved and long. And I'm happy to say that Dr. Vidyasagar was one of the pioneers who understood the role of surfactant. So this surfactant is a substance which is artificially available, manufactured and marketed. This could be instilled into the lungs of the babies who develop respiratory distress, these premature babies, and most of these babies can be now saved. So he is one of the earliest pioneers and contributors in the management of RDS, respiratory distress syndrome. And because of his untiring efforts, and this was a team effort, and no single person can do it, but his team was involved in many clinical trials. They were published in most medical journals like New England Journal of Medicine, like Lancet, where they affected more than 30, 40. So number of articles, maybe I think 10 or 12 in number, RCTs in NEGM and Lancet. So that was his success story. So his research has contributed hugely and greatly in improving the outcome of these tiny babies. As a teacher and educationist, he was instrumental in developing a strong postgraduate program in neonatology in the US and has trained hundreds of students which are spread all over the world and who occupy very prominent positions. He was also responsible for establishing a very successful Indo-US exchange program in neonatology. Under this program, a large number of Indians were trained in neonatology and they were hugely benefited. He has been very active to our National Neonatology Forum of India and the Indian Academy of Pediatrics to spread the message of newborn health all across India. He was instrumental in bringing neonatal resuscitation program of the American Academy of Pediatrics to India way back in 1990. Due to his tireless efforts, neonatal resuscitation program has taken firm roots in India, and every postgraduate student who passes out from medical college and arts entry degree is now well versed and well skilled in the art and science of neonatal resuscitation. His achievements, a number of achievements to his credit, he has won many numerous prizes, fellowships, awards, honorary degrees. There are too many to count. More recently, he was awarded with Fulbright Naval Lectureship. I will also say the best achievement of Dr. Vidyasagar is to see students occupying high positions all over the world. And those are the positions where they can shape and influence the policies concerning newborn and maternal health. He is also a cultural ambassador of India. Dr. Vidyasagar is equally active in cultural activities. He was founding member and the first president of Hindu Temple of Greater Chicago. And he and his wife sport annual Tyagaraja music festival here every year. I also take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Dharampuri, his wife. She is professor of pediatrics and developmental pediatrician in Chicago. Yesterday we heard her deliver a very informative talk on early intervention in children at risk of developmental delays. Welcome back to BHU and Kashi. Lastly, I take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks and gratitude to IIT BHU for having such a wonderful program to invite eminent speakers from abroad of India and have an opportunity to interact in BHU campus. The visit of Dr. Vidyasagar to BHU was made possible only because of such a good and innovative program. So I'm thankful to the director IIT BHU and Dr. Sanjay Sharma. Very dynamic because of his untiring time and dedication that you see Dr. Vidyasagar here. So once again, I am thankful to all of you, and now I invite Dr. Vidyasagar to deliver the talk.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma and Dr. Kumar, for your kind invitation and introduction. After reading all the list, hearing the names of the luminaries who passed before me, I feel whether I'm very delightful to be here. I'm very humbled and honored to be here. I would like to first of all express my sincere gratitude for you to bring me here, because we've been hearing about BHU for many, many years since my childhood, and afterwards, the eminence and prominence of BHU as a historical institute in India, and it is but I have to tell a story. This is the Nagapur Shastri of Karnataka. Looks like you people have very good connection with Karnataka. Formally, you have Gurupa Institute of Philosophy of Karnataka. This Mr. Shastri, I don't know if you can read it from the that line shows he was a Sanskrit scholar in Karnataka, and he had written a book on Buddha in Sanskrit. Sri Malaviji was visiting in Karnataka where Shastri was living, and they happened to meet because he was a Sanskrit scholar, and he wrote the book, and Malaviji was very happy and encouraged him and offered him a position. And then Mr. Shastri is none other than my wife's grandfather, not my wife's grandfather, and they established a relationship. Later on, Mr. Shastri was also introduced to Dr. Ambedkar, who was looking for a teacher in Sanskrit. Somebody had a difficulty in finding a right teacher because not many people were willing to take him as a student. And Mr. Sri Malaviji, in the presence of Gandhiji, introduced Malaviji to Dr. Ambedkar, and Gandhiji said, "मैं गुरु का दरवाज़ था ना, देखो आगे तुम्हारा गुरु." So he introduced her grandfather as a Sanskrit teacher for Mr. Ambedkar, and they lasted several years as a teacher. Mr. Shastri used to go to Mr. Ambedkar's house. So this is a very fascinating story I've been hearing, and I did ask my brother-in-law to make sure that what he tells is not just a oral history that he is recorded. He did publish this incident, and I'm obviously very proud. Perhaps my grandchildren will be more proud that their great-grandfather was an associate of Malaviji as well as Gandhiji and Ambedkar. Well, the statement of today's problem is the high neonatal infant and maternal mortality is a major problem both in India as well as outside, and it is a major challenge of modern medicine, particularly in developing countries. Fortunately, in the US, we have solved to great extent this problem, but it remains a major problem in Africa, India, and many developing countries. For those who are not medically oriented, are not physicians today, we need some definitions to go with before we talk about infant mortality and neonatal mortality and the significance of it. A third baby is born usually within 38 to 42 weeks of gestation. Preterm baby by definition is less strong, not 73 weeks, 37 weeks or less, and lower birth weight baby by definition is baby who weighs about 2,500 grams. Normally these babies, normal babies are about 3,000 and 3,500 in India. So the question is, what percentage of babies are weighed at birth to know whether it is a low birth weight baby or the normal baby? Because the gestational age is based on the last menstrual period of mother, and you calculate how many weeks gestational age is. So the most appropriate method is, equally a very consistently reproducible method is weight. But a question for the students and the audience, and again, this is where it starts your overlap of medicine and biotechnology and techniques and engineers, so on and so forth. A simple question what percentage of babies are weighed at birth around the world? And you'll be surprised, maybe 20% or less. That's because you don't have a weighing scale, and India, as Dr. Kumar can tell us, what percentage of babies are weighed. Maybe same difficulty if you go to primary health center. Even if you go to primary health center, you will have a weighing machine which has never been calibrated properly and not weighed properly. Why is it important? Again, to know if the baby is fed lower weight who has more problems are babies as compared to the food of babies. So as simple as technique is weight the baby. So the challenge for innovators and technology students, engineers, is come up and think of what is the simplest and best way of developing a weighing machine. Maybe perhaps you can carry a pocket. Not the spring balance. Spring balance is very inaccurate. So every step of the level, we think we can improve the care of the baby by improving some innovations and new technology. So keep looking for, and I will highlight from time to time when I discuss about a problem, what can be done. And this is the one thing I can start with. Now, infant mortality rate, again, this is a definition, it's a statistical thing, you should look at it. That a number of children below 1 year per 1,000 live births. So you should know per 1,000 live births, in that region, or in the city, or in the country, then you should know the babies who die. Now, I'm trying to find out this one again. How do we know that? Do we have a census? Do we have a data? You don't have a census every year. The only census comes 10 years or so. And if the baby dies, do you have a record of the baby's death? And who records it? Where does the information go to? And what can we do? And again, these are, in spite of a lot of developments that are going on in this country, we very much lack a system to collect this information almost online day to day as it is happening. There are attempts, even any institution, I have not yet talked about Dr. Kumar, what is the database they have here, but the database system is very, very lack. And because you have a lack of data, then you do not know exact numbers. And those who read this information, you read from what is known as sampling registration technique. And this is only sampling, this is not actual. And there is a lot of variation between that. Similarly, maternal mortality death ratio is the number of deaths of women with causes related to pregnancy and childbirth of 100,000, 1 lakh as is called in women. So these data are very important to know, because unless you know the problem, you cannot develop a solution. And you know the problem, then you have to see what are the other problems associated with, then you can develop a solution. As I'm talking about this thing, again, I want to highlight that these are the opportunities for the upcoming generation in IT technology, in engineering technology, medicine technology. But you cannot do that by sitting in your own room in front of the computer. You have to come together, therefore, together. I'm showing this map of the area, and the circle area is the Kazakhstan capital Almaty. Almaty is very well known for its areas for declaration of Almaty Declaration, which was as early as very about 30 years ago when they declared health for all by 2000. That was the WHO declaration that we should be working towards developing. This was 1978 time, and ever since then, WHO has been putting a lot of proposals to improve the newborn health and maternal health. And there's a whole of list of things. I'm not going to go into each of them, but suffice to say, even coming in 1990, about 25 years ago, WHO and many countries in the world were dissatisfied with the progress made in terms of fertility reduction of infant mortality and maternal mortality. They developed what is known as Millennium Development Goals, and at that time, or even around that, the number of mothers who died, I mentioned to you, number of deaths of mothers who died because of the pregnancy-related factors for 1 lakh of deliveries. And the death is not necessarily at the time of birth, but is up to 6 weeks postpartum or before that, because related to death, causes or problems related to pregnancy can extend up to more than 4 or 5 weeks postpartum, post-delivery. Unfortunately, until a decade ago, there used to be 1 woman dying of pregnancy-related death every minute of the year, and round the year every day. So 600,000 women used to die every year. Some extensive every year around the world, and unfortunately, India contributed a major portion of that deaths. So there have been a lot of programs to help mothers through the antenatal care, delivery care, and now it is currently has reduced to 300,000 per year. That means half of it, but still it's a big problem. As you can see, the bottom line is extending 1990 to year 2000. The causes of maternal mortality rate is decreasing, but you can go back and see the major cause of maternal mortality is maternal hemorrhage. Now, how is that? Why did mothers die? What is the problem? Now we have got a blood bank, which is blood. First of all, it's because the baby mothers deliver in the villages and at home. And we cannot anticipate which mother is going to hemorrhage and which not. I have an example. I saw some 15-20 years ago. I came to Amati and I was waiting in the emergency room in one of the district hospitals. One mother was ill. I'll show the picture later on. And she died on the table when the nurses were taking blood pressure. And the story was the mother has been bleeding for last 12 hours, and they brought on a bike guy, and by the time the mother came, she died. They lost blood. So that's the story it used to happen. So what can we do? How do we recognize? Well, if somebody, 2-3 things could have been done. Somebody recognizes that hemorrhage is a bad thing to happen in a pregnant woman. So when a woman is pregnant, antenatal education is important. Not only the mother, but maybe her spouse, her mother-in-law, her husband, father, everybody, because women don't talk about bleeding. It's a very personal thing, and they don't tell anybody how long it's bleeding. But if they are made aware that bleeding is not good, the moment the mother has excessive bleeding, they can call them. And then you need a transportation. And once the mother comes to the hospital, people should be equipped. I don't know how the Amati hospital is now. I saw that I did not only Amati, any district hospital. If you go there, emergency room, everybody will be scrambling for a blood pressure machine. That is not how it should be. If an emergency room should be fully equipped, emergency medical room, exactly the emergency services. So things have improved. So you should have blood pressure first. Health education of mothers, health education of the family, a good transport system, and then well prepared, the preparedness in the hospital. And each of these junctions, each of these areas, it is not just the doctors who are the end point. Doctors see the problem at the end of the problem. There is a role for all different groups of people, health educators, engineers, so on and so forth. In our own hospital, innovation group, the medical doctors and engineering department are working on a tool where they collect the blood from the mother who's bleeding and filtrate and are reinfused to the mother because many places do not have a blood bank. So can we prepare something of that? Now this is taking a combination of obstetrician, actually one of the medical students and an emergency doctor working with people, and then an engineer and infectious disease people, blood bank people, all these people are working together to develop a system where can not only can weigh how much blood is lost, because yes, every birth is associated with a bleeding, but bleeding exceeds 500 ml. That is a significant one and may cause problem. So how to quantitate? Here, I don't know how much, at least women perhaps know. When they go to the casualty ward, they look at the pad, how many pads are soaked with the blood and the weight. Now, those should be simple. If you do not have a machine which weighs close to a gram, you cannot really make an assessment. If it makes only an ounce to ounce, you cannot make a difference how much blood is lost. So again, technology is quite important. But how do we reach in the Western world today's infant mortality is 6 per 1,000. So having defined earlier the infant mortality of number of babies who die within first year of life per 1,000 live births, we have the data, keep maintaining data in USA. This is actually the state of Illinois. Here. In 1907, close to 100 babies used to die for every 10% of the babies used to die. But it started decreasing not because of the doctors, not because of the antibiotics, but simply changing the water, the sanitation. It dropped, as you see the arrow, the infant mortality decreased because it decreased the infection. Then we gave the antibiotics in 1940s, then we further decreased. Neonatal intensive care unit was a new phenomenon when I started my training 50 years ago in 1960s. And ever since then, it continues to decrease. As you see the green bars and white bars and red bars. The bars I'm showing you, the red bar shows particularly of interest to you, it is near next door neighbor China. Their infant mortality is dropped. Actually, every day is dropping. At the time I mentioned about 5 years ago, it was 22. That corresponded to in America 1969. In India, even today, your infant mortality is 44. That corresponds to the situation in America in 1929-1930. That's about the time that the building was being built here. And unfortunately, Pakistan still has mortality which is like 1917. So these are the variations, of course, within India. There are other states, I don't think I have a data here, from Tamil Nadu, which is much better than many other states, and your UK requires a lot more help in that regard. Now, what happened in these years? You will not be able to read this, but there are various areas: neonatology, obstetrics, gynecology, sanitation, improvement of various things. Where here in the time period of last night, close to 1960 to year 2000 in the baseline, and the infant mortality is shown you in the dotted line. The upper dotted line is US, lower dotted line is UK, and with each new therapies, new innovation, infant mortality has dropped and continues to drop. The major drop occurred in the 1960s onwards, when neonatal intensive care units became normal, and later on, as Dr. Kumar mentioned about surfactants, so on and so studies. So there are so many innovations have taken within the last 50 years of my career, and fortunately, I've been in both a witness as well as a partner or a participant in these areas, having contributed little as something, and we have seen those changes. These are all applied to Western world. Now, I think one other thing you have to look at is how are we doing compared to other countries. Here, the blue line shows, again, you got a year 1950 to projected year 2020. What it shows is, in China, very soon after 1960, they see a tremendous drop in infant mortality. And ever since it's dropping, whereas in the beginning, all China, Pakistan, and India started their infant mortality around 400 level. But the drop in China continued much faster and reached a low level, whereas India is still lagging. We cannot take any solace that we are better than Pakistan, but Bangladesh has taken over. Their infant mortality is better than India. So, I think we have a long way to go. Well, if we continue to be like here, and these are pointed at this pointed. If we continue to remain the same, see, this is Europe and UK and USA, their levels have increased. They have already reached. But what about the countries who are high today? And this is where India falls down. How long it will take for them to reach the infant mortality of the Western states? It will be 2085 You don't 2100. It will take that long time. So we don't want to reach, and therefore each of you, one and a half, especially in a generation, should start saying how can we decrease. And unfortunately, the African countries, they are so old and so difficult situation. It may take another 100 or 200 years for them to reach our level unless something is done in between. So if we maintain today's standards, it will remain the same thing. So that is the magnitude of the problem. In USA, there were 10 major achievements in the health in the 20th century, the previous century. And one among them was reduction of infant mortality and maternal mortality. Now, how did this maternal mortality or neonatal mortality, I should make other statements. Among the infant mortality, we define infant mortality from birth to 1 year of age. Large number of babies die within the first 4 weeks of life. That period is known as neonatal period. And that's when majority of deaths occur almost here in this country, about 75% of the babies die. So you want to improve the neonatal care, and in order to improve the neonatal care, we have to improve maternal care. So it is not only the doctors, people who contributed to improvement in neonatal mortality are better unit of the physiologists and biochemists, anesthesiologists, obstetricians, pediatricians, nurses, neonatologists. So what it does is, it takes a multiple, more than one discipline. Almost a statement, it takes a village. It's a statement of a village. It takes a village and us scientists to work on this area. And there was various teams I mentioned. It does not make a sense to you. But let me say, for example, if they are biochemists, here the biochemist Dr. John Pattle was the earliest man to recognize that when you lungs are affected with the nerve gas in the First World War and Second World War, they were affecting the surfactant, and bubbles that come out of the lungs will be decreased. And anesthesiologist, well, Dr. Alakirno, Glasgow, he recognized breathing. And Gregory, the anesthesiologist, he told how to stabilize the lungs, and so on and so forth. So it required many other disciplines to work with. With an improved temperature, because neonatologists or pediatricians recognized the core basic mortality increases, and then there was a time when 100 per thousand was infant mortality, and I think the basis was developed. Nutrition was improved later on, 1900 to 40. Then if they reduced the mortality to 15 unit mortality, and then the respiratory support came further down. Now, nursing is equally important, and fetal medicine, which is of the late 1980s, that started working with other operations. We are not working in two compartments, and other ventilator things at home, electrical ventilators. Now, these are all because of the involvement of the engineers, biochemists, hyperalimentation, so on and so forth, and subtraction therapy, as Dr. mentioned earlier. So, WHO recognized that half of the gains made between 1952 to 1990 were due to access to technology alone. Now, I think if you actually there was some analysis when the Japanese and Koreans were really moving very forward in 1960s, it was assumed that using empirical model, the economists have concluded that 1/3 of the gains of Korea and Japan was due to changing demography of increasing younger population, the so-called demographic gift. Maybe because the birth population was high and the younger generation was there, and they contributed to various new technologies and so on and so forth. They contributed to growth of science at the time. Now, for India, we are still going through this economic, the demographic change is going on. Many of you are still very young in this population, and you can make a difference, and you are the real demographic gift to India, and you have to show it well, like this lady in a village is going to a computer that has come through now. This was made about 15-20 years ago by the Banaras Foundation, but today I'm sure the computers are available in the villages. And so, in putting all these ideas together, how do we really come to some kind of model? The model should be, until now, even in many institutions in America, basic scientists had in one room or in one corner, clinical scientists had, because they never discussed, they were doing a lot of studies on each side. They didn't know what one was doing and how to interact that one, how it affects each other. So the model they created is a collaborative model since 1970s, so that they talk to each other. Now, NIH has National Institute of Health encourages translation research, linking basic science and clinicians. So if you write a grant today, unless you show some linkage between the two groups and how you want to follow, not only today, in future, how do you discuss it here, and what are the results you will learn, chance of funding will be less. So, if you want to look at the roadmap of a clinical research, you usually have a clinical question, and you look at a clinical or laboratory investigation done, and then you find a solution. You want to think of the solution. You develop a new treatment, new questions, and then again new research you have to continue going. So I think that DCD model has to be developed in India as well. So therefore we proved in biomedical engineers, because the institute I'm talking about, is the application of engineering principles and design concept of medicine and biology for healthcare purposes. This field seeks to close the gap between engineering and medicine. And it combines the design problem solving of engineering. Just like I was mentioning earlier, the innovation and engineering department in the University of Illinois is working closely with us in developing the retransmission of bleeding in the mother. Now, if I put together, this is how it should be. A model for clinical research should be an application, especially related to newborn medicine, pediatricians, and subspecialties within that area. Combine their forces with engineering and basic development and develop solutions and innovation. Now, how has this worked out, the research? A lot of people don't very well understand, even in America, that what the NIH funding is doing to science and how much is contributing. The annual budget of NIH in the USA is spending $30 billion. If you don't know the scope of what $30 billion can buy, the budget is so big that it is equivalent to the total budget of 6 African countries, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Ghana, Cameroon, Tanzania, Uganda, and all put together. That's the total budget. Or, if you want to compare with Indian then, it's equivalent to 60% of your Indian defense budget. Can you believe it? Very huge amount. So what are we getting for that? 80% of the NIH budget supports 300,000 researchers at 2,500 universities in the US and across the world. And in year 2000 alone, it published greater than 152 1.5 lakh papers. Of course, the USA had all the countries in the volume publication of medical scientific papers. UK is the second one, not necessarily NIH supported, but they published 44,000. Now, it's interesting to see that China increased publication from 1.2% of the world publications in medicine in 2002 to 6% by 2012. It took a decade, nevertheless. But unfortunately, our data, our Indian data, is not to be seen anywhere. And there is a very much need. A multidisciplinary research would be ideal, and I think that's where your institution and the country should go for. You perhaps know all of you, the name figure here, Sam Pitroda. He lives in our hometown, Oak Brook, and we meet him often. Here, he had a review during his knowledge commission time. The number of, in the one graph, you are seeing upper graph and lower graph, number of publications by year by China and India, and you can see China is flying high and India is still flat. And the lower graph is number of patents they applied, and you can see China on the plane. And big countries, other big countries which we are not concerned, I should not necessarily, those are not our models, but China is the one really compare, we should look at it. Now, we also look how many researchers are there per million by country. 100 researchers per million by country shows India is only 1.5. Per 100 researchers per million. So, per million, 150 researchers in India, and you can look at the USA, South Korea, UK, and China, Brazil, they have a lot of them. So there is a need to really put our effort to increase our researchers. I can give 2 examples quickly because Dr. Kumar has mentioned already. One is a thermal regulation. This is where Dr. Hess, he happens to be one of the earliest head of the department, in my department, Dr. Hess. He developed those incubators, you see them on the, and he started showing decrease in neonatal mortality. He also started infant transport system in 1920s in Chicago. Every taxi had a plug-in to put a baby in. Now, in those days, baby, a primitive baby was more of a curiosity, and they used to put in exhibitions to attract people. But they would take care of the baby simultaneously with the exhibit. And eventually, it improved so much that Dr. Hess and Mr. Lundin, who was a nurse in those days at Michael Reese Hospital, showed the survival of 800, 900 now babies. I don't know if you can read from there, but those are the babies who are small. Now, that's one example of the engineering of incubator. Now, other things that physiologists have helped us to understand, because many of the babies who die at birth are because of lack of feeding. And for those not medical people, what happens is, in utero the lungs are filled with the fluid, and after birth, baby cries like in all movies. When the baby cries, it takes a breath, and then baby is alive. And that's how the lungs become big. But to understand that, it took a lot of the process that takes place within 1 minute at birth. And I won't go through all these phases, but the lungs, when the lung fluid here and air enters here, then the forces have to overcome airway resistance, viscosity of fluid, and surfactant. Now I'm talking like engineer, and these are the engineering and physics point of view. All the lung stability, at the end of first or second breath, babies retain air in the lung, and that is based on the Laplace equation. Laws of diffusion of gas is what determines how the CO2 in oxygen in the blood, and Dalton's law, other laws explain what the pressure of gases in blood, and airway resistance, so on and so forth. Unless we understood physiology, physics, we cannot understand the physiology. And they were all contributed to, well, Dr. Kumar said something about surfactant. I just want to tell you, in order to understand the surfactant treatment in babies, we did a baboon studies. And when the baby baboon is delivered prematurely by C-section, at age, usually they're 180 days, they're full term, and we deliver from 40, you get a chest X-ray like this. This is not a newborn baby, this is a human baby, it has a tail here. So this is a baboon baby, soon after birth, looks similar to baby. Now these babies we use for studies of surfactant, and we are able to show the histology. Now, having come to that point, I want to show you one other thing where IIT can be helpful. I mentioned to you earlier, we need data collection. There's a model. I hope Banaras Hindu University will take the lead because of your IT and model. Developing a database for neonatal and maternal, where you collect every piece of information in the mother and baby, and especially neonatal infection. We have several systems, one is called hormone output data, other is pediatric company. Now this data is from pediatrics. What it shows is if you collect, they have about over 1 million newborn, less than 15 and 2,500 babies in their database. And from there, they have seen over the years period, what is the pattern of the baby getting oxygen, what is getting ventilation, so on and so forth. You cannot perhaps read from here, but what it shows is that they were able to trend that with improved management, the requirement of oxygen has come down, the requirement of ventilation has come down, and they can continue to improve their care, only if they have data of this magnitude and management. Second is, here the infection is very much a big problem. Babies Kumar and he may say that it is the way we deliver, but after a week we get infection because that's related to a number of things. One of them is cat-related infection. And what they have shown is by using some principles, these are normative data with cat-related infection, and with some intervention, they are able to cut down the cat-related infection. We talked about, we were talking earlier, one of the complications of baby, extreme prevention baby surviving is develop a eye problem, ventricular hyperplasia. That's because of a high oxygen concentration, even in spite of monitoring. But these people have done very close monitoring, introducing the CQ-I project, and they were able to reduce stage 3 and 4, reassigning stage of ROP by laser therapy over the years of period by using CQ-I project. But if you only have data, you can do that. Now, what would be survival? See, these are the mortality rates for 25-week gestation, almost 23, 24 week gestation. you can see mortality increases for every week in patient, mother, baby, and mother. Similarly, when the baby, every 100 grams baby gains weight in utero, the mortality is low. So this kind of data you can get only when you have a lot of data collected. Now, there are several economic benefits. In the US, over 10 years, estimated benefit of over $50 billion benefit because of these studies, responsible for 470,000 healthy life years. And return was 4,600%. So your administrators, your minister will say, why you want to spend all this money in your database? That's one aspect. If you have a database, you can start developing various projects. Well, even in India, your mentors and senior people are recognizing that even 6 decades of independence, medical research, which is the mother of new knowledge, has remained a non-issue in India. If India were to emerge as a global leader, the emphasis must shift from importing knowledge to indigenous generation knowledge. I think that's very important. So, you have many options. Physicians can do what basic scientists can do, and YDI technology can do. I think. One of them is therapy, other is electronic health records is very important. Also, in addition, you are getting a newly emerging disease as your vaccinations are preventing death from infection. You are seeing and premature babies. India has the largest number of premature babies. They will develop eventually diabetes, hypertension, and coronary disease, and they will be very problem. So in 2010, the non-communicable disease accounted for 2% of global death. 80% of these occur in low and middle income. And that calls for a research to reduce this one. There are 6 areas we need to concentrate. They are tobacco, alcohol, obesity, hypertension, and diabetes perhaps. Alcohol is not as much in women, and tobacco is not much in women, but also obesity, hypertension should be addressed. And it's called NCD countdown by 2025. So the data warehouse I showed you has not a benefit. Well, what I would say, is there any data to say all the things that we are doing in a newborn baby are helpful? I don't know if you can read this data, but so each of the interventions here shows that they have saved millions of babies or so. Universal coverage of these 4 products in high mortality countries would save 1 billion babies a year. So there is good evidence that if you use these things, you can do a lot more. And I will move forward. So, in conclusion, the role of a university is to provide solid foundation for future generation of researchers in every discipline. The role of medical colleges is equally much larger than producing good doctors fulfilling the national agenda. We need greater scientists and innovators even from medical school. And I think the promotion of research, in order to be, I say, the research in the 3rd Tenet academic institution, that is, one is clinical thing and patient care, the doctor is important to in developing innovative therapies, and is equally important in developing public health policies, public health policy. So, a strong research in order to really apply focus, stay focused at the beginning of this lecture. A strong maternal and neonatal database is an essential need for future clinical research in India. Collaboration with IT department and the clinical department will help a great deal in developing research program. Well, now, one thing I want to mention. India has thus far produced only 10 Nobel laureates. Only 3 in the field related to physiology, chemistry, and medicine. The winners are Sir Ronald Ross, does anybody know? And where was he born? Almora, UP. And where did he discover? Not not in UP, in Hyderabad, for example. And Harpo, but usually we don't think Ron Ross being one of our methodologies. We talk about only Harpo with Sarana, Venkatrama, Sibiram, but I'm talking about these are medical oriented people. And you'll be interested now, Dr. Chandrasekhar, who got astronomy. Where was he born? Lucknow before 40. So he was born in Pakistan really. But he's our man. Well, so I think in many medical and engineering institutes, multidisciplinary programs are being offered during their how to do that. So AGS, we offer multidisciplinary university line. We have MD, PhD, meaning the students can do MBBS and then PhD program. They do EGNET program, Global Health program. We have several students. Engineering and medicine, MBA and medicine. So you can really start developing this program so that you will develop a lot of scientists. Speaking to high school students, as Ram said, the culture of excellence is not achieved by accident, but through a process in which a nation, an individual, and an organization constantly tries to get better. In order to do that, we have a critical thinking, with a passion for success, a creative mind, has the uniqueness of discovery, anything and imagination at the beginning of the field. Invention discovery comes from. And you started to, I'm very glad to see you, we were starting to high schools in India. So, he said, regarding the critical thinking, you have to challenge your brain with the difficult thinking and ideas. Science is a lifetime mission. You have to acquire knowledge and work hard to realize your dream. Each move, Earth, moon, and earth will become economic activity in the next 15 years. It takes some centuries. And we will be seeking a lot of different things from them and, of course, a lot from you. So, I think I would end at this point, and thank you very much.
In your view or opinion, what do you think? What is our research company in medicine? And why our research is not of high quality? Is it related to that we have assured position in university for 60-65 years? So once we join university, whatever way we do or not do, we will be given promotion, and then our salary is all set, and then we are going to get the salary. Unlike American system or many other European countries where you are assessed every few years, then you are put to test whether you are doing the work or not.
Well, that's one of the very important questions that now is asking how to keep people doing research. We know from several other things are happening in America. We used to get a tenure track only after demonstrating your doing research and getting grants. So, but they nurture. When you hire a candidate and you hire a student candidate who has the aptitude for research and show some research, or others have recommended that they work with them and he has a good candidate. Such candidate is given 2-3 years of time with a good support and only like a service will be only 30% clinical study, 60% research, depending on patient's disease. During that period, he is assigned a mentor, and a multiplied grant, they are trained how to write a grant, and they are applied for grant. And by 3-4 years, if they don't do that, the head of the department will be asking you, what is the problem? And it's not that everybody will get a grant, but at least there are difficulties. Then the department may extend for a bilateral investment. So the point is, once he's done that, from associate to assistant professor is not our friend. It again goes to from there because not only how much is your paper has been published in international journals, so I can pick up, if you understand the department, I can pick up anybody in the landscape. We have seen my colleagues paper, certain paper, even though after publication. So this is a kind of a evaluation program. Obviously, people for the research field they continue. So you are left with people who are seriously interested. If they're not interested, they do not practice. They don't make enough money, and they have to really invite such a support team and so on and so forth. So that's how we do. Any questions from the student?
Some of the questions or problems related to respiratory distress syndrome where basically an engineer can focus on and can solve the problem.
Yes, you are
Basically, I'm a faculty of the School of Biomedical Engineering.
engineering.
Yeah, engineering.
Oh, very good. Yeah, no, I think it's good. Engineering student is academic. I can rather than take another time. But obviously, unless maybe as you saw one of the picture I showed you, for breath, it takes time for the baby to clear the fluids and expand the lungs, and then dependent on various factors. It stops to get fluid, airway resistance, and it stops to get contraction. Lump of liquid, you know that.
Yes.
So those are the based on that one, in order to understand how can you help and what can be done, that depends on your interaction with the doctor here. Now, because they say you should ask, are you able to make the diagnosis without getting it? The normal system is get an X-ray, clinical examination, get in some other vitamin for that. So you should discuss with them and have a 1 minute, 2 minute discussion. You have to have a discussion and say, how can we improve on this one and what can we do? So it's a step by thing. For example, I just selected a model innovation before I came there and getting an email to tell them what is the next step. I can't do that unless you can do the next step. So I think your point is well, what is the problem? Probably delayed recognition of respiratory distress. And why? And what can you add? Why X-ray is cost? That gas is a test, you don't have blood gas. So can you do something different? Some people analyze, for example, a cry analysis, and they say the cry analysis recognition. There's sound. You put a stethoscope, you record the sound, and identify the intensity of sound, and they reflect this before getting X-ray. So it can be done, but you have to have.
So, as far as my understanding, the major problem is like going up to the scale of alveoli and finding the right strategy to treat the cells and find the method to induce them for secreting surfactants. So, how can we scale down and go up to the level of alveoli to diagnose something?
That's true. First of all, your effort is very good. What you're saying is, you have a lung in a big tube here, but air is exchanging in a very 1 micron size alveoli. So you really get, when you do a blood test, you are getting a some effect of all the alveoli, how they are working. Some are working and some are not working. So they prove they're done and that's what you get a blood test. So it's not important to get every alveoli, but we can measure a collective information. So among that, then there are some factors which are high fidelity that give you more information. The low fidelity that is the less information. So that you have to choose what is to be done. Ask the patient. There some are there or not there, it's not a good fidelity. X-ray is better because you look at what is happening. Blood tests are even better because what is the sum effect of all these alveoli not functioning together. Similarly, it comes a lot more discussion with people, and you're very good and you're the right person to work with that.
So, just one more thing I have. Like, what are the differences that we can have in case of RDS and in case of a person who has who has been smoked for say several years. So they also get some kind of problem with the surfactant. Smokers. They also get some kind of problem in the adult stage. So can we refer the same kind of treatment method to these two cases?
Depending on the principle, if you say, okay, smoking causes similar aspects of RDS, is that true? It's not necessarily true, because immediate birth and collapse of the lung is different. When a smoker is a chronic lung COPD, but once you develop COPD, it's like